Welcome to GOLT Talk, your podcast for technology and innovation in the legal profession. If you're searching for solutions to revolutionize your legal practice, you're in the right place. 10 minutes pure, actionable product insights from CEOs shaping the future of legal technology. And here is your host, Pfennig.
Welcome to GOLT Talk, your podcast for innovation in the legal and compliance space. 10 minutes, pure, actionable insights from people shaping the future of legal and technology. My name is Pfennig, I'm your host, and today I am welcoming Jamie Tso in Hong Kong, a very special guest as we deviate a little bit from the standard protocol of this podcast, but I was actually in Hong Kong 2 weeks ago attending the Legal Week upon invitation from the local Department of Justice. And of course, I've been following Jamie's LinkedIn post recently, and coincidentally, we met in person, and here he is, an AI hobbyist, someone who is posting on LinkedIn, someone I feel will be providing tremendous insights and maybe even forward-looking projections on our podcast. And with that, over to you, Jamie. Just introduce yourself a little bit and then we dive right in.
Hi, Tom. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. So I'm a lawyer based in Hong Kong. I specialize in fund formation, advising hedge fund and private equity clients on their negotiation with investors. On the side, I'm also very interested in working with AI. When I was a trainee, I've already been training small language models to do some entity mapping. And since GPT came out, I've been experimenting with it and seeing how, exploring different use cases to see how we can automate some of the most tedious workflows that lawyers face. So I've been exploring since GPT 3.5 came out, and 4, 5, and then I'm seeing a lot of evolution in this space. First, we had chatbots, which only do text input-output. Then we have LLM who can do tool calling to complete a certain task like an agent. And then we see the emergence of coding agents, basically the winner of this category. And right now, I think we're in this golden era of vibe coding because we have seen a lot more legal tech apps being vibe coded using these, winner category. This is the winner of this category, basically coding agents. So I think we can go into that later.
We need to start on a lower basis, Jamie. Just explain what is vibe coding for those who have not come across this term yet.
Sure. So vibe coding is basically a term coined by the co-founder of OpenAI called Andrej Karpathy. And vibe coding is basically a way of making software without looking at the codes. Basically, you give in to the vibes, embrace the exponentials, and this is the exact language used by Andrej Karpathy. So to translate it into actual legal tech language, it would mean that a lawyer could be using these super productive AI coding agents to make legal tech apps for themselves without knowing how to code. And by vibe, it just means that you use natural language to describe these features and see the software being created on the fly with those features built in.
Yeah, I've been doing it myself. It's just absolutely fascinating not knowing any coding language. You're prompting these tools and your outcome, both on the UI, visuals, as well as the coding part, will happen almost simultaneously. So let's dive into some of the things that you've built, because you told me when we were in Hong Kong, you like building things, and the thousands of people that are following your LinkedIn post are seeing literally live what you have been building for what use cases. Can you give us 2 or 3 examples of what you have recently been building, please?
Sure. So I've been looking, the reason why I got into vibe coding is because I've been following these Taiwanese engineers on Threads, and I saw them creating these really fantastic simulation using Gemini 3, which is the latest model from Google. And I also see them vibe coding clones of different apps. Like I've seen that some people try to clone Windows 97. I've seen people trying to clone DocuSign as well. So why not try to do something similar? Why not try to clone some of the most used legal tech apps in the industry? Well, as all of you would probably be aware, Harvey and Legora are the 2 biggest and hottest legal tech AI startups in the world right now, and they have a really popular feature which I myself find really useful as well. It's called tabular review. So it basically did Excel for attorneys. So what I basically did is I looked into the product pages, kind of feed my understanding of their features to Gemini and tell Gemini to kind of recreate that kind of a feature. And within just a few prompts, it created an app that just like that. Maybe it got 80% of it right. Of course, it wasn't perfect. For example, it wasn't a collaborative feature. The PDF viewer wasn't quite right. But then, it's 80% there, to be honest. So that's one thing. I also experimented with creating a mini version of Spellbook. Some of you may know Spellbook is they position themselves as cursor for lawyers. Basically, a word add-in or a tool to allow you to use AI to edit documents. So I thought, why not try that as well? So I built something similar, although it only works on HTML files. But then I've seen other lawyers following the trend who made a Word version of Spellbook, has much more capabilities than what I've coded. So I definitely see that we were heading there. So I published my workflow on LinkedIn. So subsequently, I open sourced not only the tool that I've created using vibe coding, but also open sourced the workflow that I exactly followed when I created the tool. That involves basically asking Gemini to do a research using web search tool to analyze the product pages of, Harvard and Agora, and then using the same descriptions generated by Gemini and putting those descriptions to Google AI Studio to create that. So yes, it was 100% gathered from public sources.
Okay, and just also in defense of those names, this was one use case, one workflow that was built. Obviously, these and other tools are offering many more features, integrated solutions. Some are having cooperations with large publishing houses. So we are not claiming to be really equal on kind of a same level yet in terms of base functionality. And I just want to make this sure that the audience appreciates that in terms of base functionality, in that very specific use case, you were essentially able to replicate that.
Yeah, so it's not 100% there, to be sure. It is basically just a mini app. You can think of it as a lightweight version of it. I'm sure there is a lot more technicalities that went into the tool. I can give you a few examples. So I imagine that's the same for all legal tech apps. When ingesting legal documents to improve accuracy, we always use this technique called retrieval augmented generation, which involves basically creating embeddings from your documents and then we calculate basically which are the most relevant sentences and excerpts before sending it to the AI. So Gemini did not use that technique because it's a state-of-the-art kind of technique. So I think that also points to a limitation of vibe coding because the current codes that are generated by AI, I think they are same codes that were used quite some years ago because the models that were trained on those codes, but not on the latest and greatest codes. So to be sure, it's not 100% there. I think there's also a lot of more useful features that the two companies are offering, state of the art. So the question becomes, what is the last mile efforts, and how are they, how are people kind of appreciating, the last mile efforts from these companies? Personally, I do feel that, they're doing a pretty good job in that regard, in creating that kind of state of the art architecture and technique when it comes to legal tech. But it's also useful to see that, just from using the frontier models and also some free credits on Google AI Studio, how far can we go already? So it's useful to identify that gap.
So that brings me obviously to the question, and many of the viewers may ask this themselves. Why have you done this? And what's the use case really for this? So is this an option for the sole practitioner who may even fly underneath the radar of these big names, who may not have those vulnerabilities as stated, maybe also a bit of a budget constraint? Is this a feasible, viable second market so to speak? Maybe you can give us a little bit of an insight here.
That's a very interesting notion. So the reason why I did these experiments was just to see how far the models can go just by themselves. And I wanted to also show other lawyers what we can already do with off-the-shelf solutions like GPT with Gemini. And I think that is a really useful benchmark in understanding the value add that these legal AI solutions are offering. I would say, yes, the secondary market, I think that the market is just too big for one player to dominate it at all. And I think there are just too many use cases in the legal world for one solution to be that end-all be-all solution. So, and there's no one size fit all, and I feel because lawyers, they have all kinds of workflows. They have their particular way of handling their work. I think that if in the future, each lawyer can use some kind of vibe coding solution to create some really personalized software on the fly that will solve his own pain point. I think that is some kind of liberation that is kind of, I think, currently overlooked by these solutions that are building at a global level and trying to of course serve a huge chunk of the market. But then obviously for mid-market, for sole practitioners who probably cannot afford these licenses, then possibly this could be a route, on top of a ChatGPT license. Maybe they can also, for example, buy Replit if they ever offer an enterprise version, building their own solution and deploying them within their own private cloud. I totally see that being a very positive feature.
We will be talking about the future characteristics of a lawyer and a law firm momentarily. But before we are doing that, I guess the question is, after your posts and with all the dynamics in the market, have you gotten any offers to commercialize these products? I could imagine after this podcast, you may even receive an invitation to some of these big brands to join them with your quasi-engineering capabilities. So is there already something in the works to see these products in the market officially?
Yeah, there was certainly a lot of interest from legal tech companies. I did receive quite a lot of invitations in that regard. But then I currently have no plans to commercialize any of the solutions that built are all open source indeed. For example, the tablet review tool has around more than 200 stars on GitHub. It's currently open source, and it has been forked 70-something times. And I've been getting a lot of developers messages saying that, thank you so much for making these open source so that I could actually incorporate them into my own tools. I think that this kind of network is pretty important because I think in the past, lawyers have done a really good job coming together to create templates. For example, we have NVCA templates, which are pretty much standardized. And as we see templates and know-how becoming workflows and possibly in the future AI agents, then I definitely see that there is a space for people to collaborate and build some common grounds and common know-how, which could be in this post-AI age codes that power our legal workflow. So right now, all the tools I've built are open source, and I'm also echoing with other lawyers who are following this trend. They are also open sourcing their tools. So I would love to encourage more people to kind of contribute to this community and try to come together to see what we can explore AI, how we can explore more use cases with AI.
Wonderful. That's a really humble statement as well. And I recall the first time the open source thing came up when Tesla opened its treasure chest and allowed people to look at their lines of coding. And that stifled a lot of innovation and competition in that space. So I'm sure this is not much different to what you and others are igniting within the legal technology space. One thing seems to be very clear listening to you, Jamie. The lawyer of the future is not just capable of reading statutes and crafting contracts and litigating in court. He or she must have a sound tech acumen. So how come that you have that? Is this something that you were born with, or can you tell us maybe the genesis of this very specific hobby?
Yeah, I think that I just like to solve problems. And of course, I've always been interested in science growing up. I think that helped a bit. But I think that I have actually tried multiple times to try to learn coding. I tried to learn coding when I was in uni. And I felt because, I joined a bootcamp, I signed up some courses, I even paid for those courses, but I never completed them because it's just irrelevant to the things or the problems that I'm trying to solve. I think it only became apparent to me that I wanted to learn coding when I was actually solving problems that I personally face. And I think that it works by trying to build something and then seeing how it breaks in practice and going one level deeper to see what needs to be debugged. I think that mindset kind of gave me a lot of fuel to learn coding. But then I didn't learn it from first principles. I didn't learn it from the ground up, from a textbook. I was just trying to solve my own problems. And then because those problems require a certain amount of knowledge in a specific domain, I kind of made myself kind of an expert in that problem that I'm trying to solve. And also the associated coding knowledge. So I think I have more coding knowledge, for example, in manipulating documents than training models, for example. I would also encourage other people who are interested in learning about coding to adopt the same approach. You gotta have a problem to try to solve first. And I think that by having a problem you're trying to solve and then building a solution to it, you will come to learn the pieces that will form that solution.
And I think every lawyer wants to solve problems, but also every lawyer wants to solve the problems faster and maybe more profitable. So this is where the technology comes into play, and you need a bit of time. But to summarize what you've just said, you need the mindset, the curiosity, the appetite, the openness, and maybe even the pressure to really go into that direction. But in essence, the future lawyer, using Richard Susskind's terminology here, is someone who is a hybrid of the traditional legal professional skills as well as the modern futuristic characteristics of coding, user experience, user journey, UI generation, workflow and designer process capabilities and the like. So the profession will need to shift towards those capabilities for sure, which is a great segue into the future law firm. And before we had this podcast, you and I had the occasion to talk a little bit, and you had made a very provocative statement that future big law firms may not be big FTE heavy, but really a few FTE full-term equivalents of people, literally. However, just a few folks using the agents, AI agents, using workflows that are automating responses would be able to generate multi-million-dollar revenues. So share a little bit your vision, how this can happen, maybe even by when we will see the first one. We've been seeing some satellites, not full scope law firms, as we know, occupying some very particular fields. But you're talking about a fully fledged law firm capable of essentially offering similar services as some of the known brains these days.
Yeah, I actually heard of this idea from a lot of different VCs investing in this space. I think they are trying to wait for a one-person billion-dollar company. I think that, that was the kind of concept that made me think, well, in the future, whether there is possibly a AI native law firm which operates solely on agents and then have a lawyer sign off on the work created by these AI agents. And it would be interesting. It's actually not unimaginable that would happen. And I feel the lawyers in the future, they would be generalists. Probably they will be handling all sorts of work from client facing to actually, but then by managing the work instead of managing a whole team of different lawyers, maybe, they will be also managing different AI agents, by telling the AI agents, what you need to correct and improve in your bench or evaluation set. And then in collaboration with human lawyers or with other human lawyers. I think that is not an unimaginable future as AI join the workforce. I think right now, AI has, of course, many lawyers are using AI as a tool, but then we are seeing AI become more and more capable. AI has been doing a lot of long-running tasks. By long-running tasks, I mean that, if we look at Claude Opus 4.5, which is the frontier model developed by Anthropic, I think the latest research is that they can do 4.5 hours of work nonstop. I think that, this is analogous to a lawyer just drafting everything from scratch, devising it, populating all the placeholders, piling the signature pairs, all autonomously. It's not unimaginable that it will go in that direction. And the question becomes, how will lawyers or law firms in general react to that? And I think that we are already seeing quite some AI native law firms who have a different business model. For example, we have seen Norm AI, we've seen Crosby, we've seen Garfield. I think they started off with automating some workflows end to end, and then of course putting humans where the agents are not capable of doing, and then in collaboration build out that workflow. And I think for big law firms, they're also doing the same thing. So it's going to be very interesting whether there will be a one-person AM20 law firm. I think it's an interesting concept to ponder upon and to think about. And I feel that it is not unimaginable if that one person can identify and target the same segment, the customer segment or the client segment, and then have a pricing strategy that would allow him or her to achieve the same results. Of course, how many years will it take to go there? I don't know, but that seems like a possible future.
I think it takes a few entrepreneurial nerds like you and me and others to give it a try and to see how far we could go. However, maybe just my own little prediction here, I think that radical model will probably go through a few iterations. I've seen it in my own consulting practice, but also in my former company, that it starts with outsourcing certain mundane and transactional workflows either into shared service centers or alternative legal services providers. And in my view, this is probably the richest field for these agents to be deployed, because they are already assembling these mass transactions and currently still have people to some degree at least involved, whereas in the future you can, like in an Amazon warehouse, probably shrink this by 90%. And if that's the case, you're talking about elimination of human services and rather automated services by way of these agents. And that is then the starting point, perhaps also for the industry, to not offer tech tools per se, but to offer workflows and to essentially offer these outsourcing services that are currently done by these known ALSP brands from these legal tech tools themselves. That to me would be at least one way to go. But to me, automation is the precursor for elimination. And while you eliminate the human part, you're not eliminating the output, the outcome of that task. And that's still a commercializable asset for a one-person law firm. So it remains to be seen when the first big law competitor with 10 entrepreneurial lawyers will enter the scene at a fraction of the current hourly rate. So with that, I guess the one question that usually comes up, and as you are a lawyer yourself, perhaps even billing hourly, I don't know, doesn't matter. Do you see there will still be those traditional models on an hourly basis, or will this completely fade?
To be honest, I don't have that much experience in that regard to give an educated answer on that front, unfortunately. But I would say, from my observation, I've seen some AI native law firms offering fixed fee as a solution. And I think the philosophy behind that is because they can calculate precisely how much is the software cost that is required to complete that workflow. For example, how many API calls to Gemini or OpenAI will I make in this workflow? The maintenance cost, the cloud cost, and so on. And I think that with every pricing model, there needs to be it needs to be justified on certain grounds. And in the AI world, I will see if we are also seeing, for example, Replit. Replit, they have adopted a rate-based, usage-based pricing. So basically, the more you use the tool, the more you get charged. And it seems like the hourly rate model to me, because being a fixed price. The same goes to Manus, because it's credit-based. So you can buy more credits. So to the extent you can calculate these costs, I think that the business model will basically adjust to that. In that sense, basically by calculating the I would say this is something that requires first principle reasoning, basically thinking from first principles, what is the absolute cost of providing, for example, this service or this product, and then I calculate the raw materials and the cost, then go from there, and then how much of this is should be attributed to API calls, how much of this should be attributed to a human lawyer doing the work.
To me, Jamie, I believe this tokenization will also happen in the legal profession. It will be a synonym for billable hour, because you're also having a financial value associated to a service, and whether you call it token or hour, at the end of the day, it comes out somewhat similarly. I also think people will always want humans to protect them as lawyers. And the more senior you are, the more protection you buy. So the tokens that you will need to purchase in order to hire a senior lawyer will ultimately be higher than the billable hour. Currently, I'm almost positive it just is a different name. Nevertheless, more or less the same concept, and I've seen it myself. Tokens, like credit cards, are quicker purchased than signing an invoice and transmitting money by wire. So to me, this tokenization will be a very profitable alternative to the billable hour, in my view. And beyond that, you have subscription models where you can also have different tiers of base, intermediary, or advanced professional services. And as we all know, we have multiple subscriptions running in parallel, which could be you have multiple law subscriptions running in parallel, which is also a very interesting new revenue stream coming up, in my view. So with that, it already shows we could go much longer than 30 plus minutes. Anything you would like to share from your perspective for the year of 2026 as we are approaching the end of the year?
Yeah, I have been reading Andre Karpathy's blog, and he most recently wrote this article about how his predictions, 2026 predictions, and I quite resonate with two of the things that he mentioned. First is we will have software that is disposable and highly personalized. So I think that this is enabled by vibe coding for sure. We'll see software having a much shorter life cycle. We'll be seeing software that is highly personalized, used by just a few lawyers with no intention to scale, and it's just used for one deal. And then, because the cost of building it is just so cheap. So I definitely see that coming. The second thing is, he said it will possibly have a team of AI agents. So this year, we see that, a lot of agents built, they are solo agents. We have different agents communicating with each other. We call them multi-agent systems, but that it's not mature enough. But then I think in 2026, I think we will see teams of agents, which will be fascinating. How it will look like, I don't know, but I think that it will kind of give rise to a lot of artificial societies, for example. That brings me back to one of the apps I vibe coded last week, basically agent simulation arena, where agents represent different parties of a contract to negotiate and debate under different scenarios. And these kind of things, I think, would become more and more plausible. And maybe in the future, we'll see a lot of these organization or societies of AI agents trying to build simulations. How that relates to law is a different topic. I see that it could be used in litigation, for example, trying to predict whether one side would win or lose, or in contracts, how this contract would be negotiated across different scenarios. So I'm really excited about that future.
I'm excited. I'm a little frightened as well, perhaps because there's so much change coming. And just in terms of those simulations, I read about this myself and I thought, okay, if they can do this in the automobile industry to simulate crash tests, if they can do this in pharmaceuticals to simulate molecule interactions and side effects, we can also do this to simulate legal outcome. And if that is going to happen, this will be another disruptor within the industry. For example, e-discovery, litigation, contract negotiation, M&A, whatsoever. So we'll have plenty, Jamie, of new areas to talk about in hopefully less than a year. It has been an absolute pleasure and a super refreshing new episode of the GOLT AI Talk. You know, GOLT AI, the platform that connects the makers of legal technology with the users of technology, bridging the gap, building trust, selecting tools, selecting newcomers as well. So stay tuned. There will be more episodes, but this one is something I will remember for a long time. Lots of food for thought, lots of projections. Very nice having you on the podcast. Jamie Tso, lawyer and AI enthusiast based in Hong Kong. Thank you so much for spending the time with us. Happy holidays. All the best for 26. Bye-bye.
Bye.